A lot of parents still think that sex ed means one huge talk, like one day your kid's going to become a tween and suddenly you're meant to sit down and explain absolutely everything about sex, puberty, bodies, consent, relationships, porn, boundaries, all in one go. And honestly, that sounds pretty exhausting. And I think that idea of the talk is one of the biggest reasons that parents get stuck because it feels huge, awkward, and really high pressure. So a lot of parents put it off. Good sex ed, it's not one giant talk. It's small conversations that you have over time. And in this video, I'm going to simplify what tweens actually need to know. And by the end, I'll show you how to work out where to start so that you don't feel like you have to teach everything at once. Now, if we've not met before, I'm CATH HAKANSON. I'm autistic and an AuDHD, and I'm a clinical sex educator, nurse, midwife, and also parent of neurodivergent kids. And I've spent years, 30 plus, helping parents make sex ed feel a whole lot simpler and less overwhelming. So this is something I know professionally, but I also know this from lived experience as well. And one thing that I see over and over again is that parents think that sex ed has to be this one massive, perfect conversation. It doesn't. And that's exactly what makes people freeze. First, I want to say this really clearly. Sex ed is not just about sex. Sex ed is about everything your child needs to know to understand their body, respect themselves and other people, to handle pressure, to stay safer, and to build healthy relationships later on. And that's why I get frustrated when people reduce it to all the sex talk, because it makes it sound much smaller than it really is. And look, I see this all the time with parents. So many parents don't reach out until puberty starts. And that's often the moment or the time when they suddenly realize, okay, I need to talk about this now. But puberty, it's only one part of sex ed. And look, puberty matters. Of course it does. But it's not the whole picture. A big reason that parents get overwhelmed is because they think they need a full plan before they even start sex ed. They think, if I start this conversation now, I need to know exactly what to say about everything from about the age 10 right through to adulthood. And that's just not true. A lot of parents aren't avoiding sex ed because they don't care. They're avoiding it because they think they have to do all of it perfectly. And look, one of the beliefs that I have about sex ed is that idea that one perfect talk, it's actually done more harm than good, because what kids actually need isn't one perfect conversation. They need to have clear, calm, honest information that they can keep coming back to, which is conversations with you. And look, I see this all the time with parents. They buy a puberty book, or they might save a podcast episode, they might download a resource, sign up for my parent emails, bookmark a few articles, and then they do nothing. And that's not because they're lazy and not because they don't want to help or have these convos. It's because in their head, it's starting to mean that they now have to map out every conversation before they even say a word. And that's the trap, because you don't need the whole roadmap before you take that first step with sex ed. You just need the next conversation. So let's start with the most obvious one, which is puberty and changing bodies. Tweens, they need clear factual information about the body changes that are coming, preferably before they happen, if possible. So that means things like periods, erections, wet dreams, breasts, body hair, body odor, sweating, emotional changes, and the fact that bodies don't all change at the same time or in the same way. I'll always say that clear, literal language is safer than vague language, because when adults are vague, kids fill in the gaps with guesswork, shame, or rubbish information that they've already picked up somewhere else, especially when kids are neurodivergent. And look, we don't need to make this dramatic, and you don't need to turn it into one giant awkward lesson. You just need to make sure that your child knows what's happening in their bodies now and what might happen, what's coming up in the future, and also that those changes are natural and they happen to everyone. And I want to just flag something here. A lot of parents stop at puberty and think that's it, they've done sex ed. But puberty's just one part of it, because some of the most important things that tweens need are actually about privacy, respect, safety, and pressure. This is another really common pattern. A child asks one small question, maybe, what's a period? Or how does someone get pregnant? And the parent panics internally. I've done it. And they panic because they hear that as, right, this is it, I have to explain everything. Often the child, they're not asking for everything. They're asking for the next piece, a bit of information. And this is such an important mindset shift, because you don't need to answer every future question. You just need to answer the question that's in front of you now, clearly and calmly. Now, the next big area is privacy, boundaries, and respect. Tweens, they really do need to understand private body parts, private spaces, private behaviour, and private information. They need to know what belongs in private and what's not for public spaces, what belongs to them and what belongs to other people. And I want to be really clear here. Privacy it's not about shame. It's about safety and it's about context. And that distinction really does matter, because if we teach privacy like it's dirty or embarrassing, kids don't become safer, they just get quieter. And respect sits alongside this as well, because respecting other people's bodies, other people's spaces, and respecting when someone doesn't want to touch or have closeness, jokes, or pressure. So kids, they should never be left to guess what adults mean by be private or be respectful. If the rule matters, it needs to be taught clearly, because guessing, it's not a safety strategy. So we need to be explicit. A private place to masturbate isn't the bathroom, because that could be the bathroom at the shops, a bathroom at the OTs, the bathroom at school. We need to say the bathroom in our house. So we do need to be quite explicit. Another topic is consent. Okay, so consent, it's not just a future sex topic. Consent starts much earlier than that. And it's about asking, checking, respecting a no, not pressuring people, and knowing that other people have boundaries. And this is where I think a lot of consent teaching goes wrong. I don't teach consent as a performance. I don't think safety should depend on a child being verbally assertive, quick, confident, or socially fluid, because that's not how safety works in real life. Silence is not consent. Freezing is not consent. And going along with something is also not consent. And this connects straight into peer group pressure, because by the tween years, pressure starts to show up through friends, jokes, dares, group chats, and trying to fit in. So kids need help understanding that fitting in is not the same as feeling okay. Respect, boundaries, and consent, they get tested in the peer group before they ever get tested in romantic relationships. And yes, tweens do also need sex basics and reproduction. They need honest, simple information about how babies are made and what sex actually is. Because if you're not going to tell them, someone else is, and they've probably already learnt about it from their peers. And look, I think parents often focus too much on this topic and not enough on everything else. So this is a part of sex ed, but it's not all of sex ed. And you don't need to give every detail in one conversation. You just need to make sure that myths, playground gossip, the nonsense that they're hearing aren't filling in the gaps. And here's the bit that parents often leave too late: online safety and porn. So if your child's online, sex ed has already started, whether you planned for it or not. Tweens need to know what porn is, They need to know that porn is not sex education, it's not a guide to relationships, and it's not a realistic picture of bodies, consent, or real life relationships. They also want to know what to do if they see sexual content, if someone sends them something, if a friend shows them something on their phone, or if they come across something upsetting or confusing. And one of the most common things here is this: they need to know that they're not in trouble for telling you. Because if the first lesson a kid learns is panic or punishment when they share something they found online with you, they'll stop coming to you. Now, I've seen this happen with parents too. They assume that the porn conversation is years away. Then something pops up on YouTube in a group chat, a search result, or another kid shows them something, and suddenly the parent realizes that they needed that conversation much earlier than they thought. So, this is one of those topics where I'd rather parents be a bit early than too late. Because once exposure's already happened, you are no longer preparing. You're actually repairing and having to do that damage control. So when we zoom out, the whole point of this video is really simple. Your tween does not need one giant talk. What they actually need is a handful of conversations over time. Puberty and changing bodies, privacy, boundaries and respect, consent, peer pressure, sex basics, online safety and porn. And that's the core. And the way I teach this is always through that same framework. Clear language, layered teaching, short conversations, always remember the context, no shame and no waiting for that perfect moment, and no expecting kids to just work it out, especially autistic kids. Because I don't believe good sex ed is about covering content and ticking boxes, I actually think that good sex ed is about making your child safer, more informed, and more likely to come back to you with their questions. So let's come back to the question from the beginning. Where do you start? You start with the topic your child is closest to needing now. So if puberty is starting, start there. If privacy and boundaries is getting messy, start there. If your kid is spending more time online, start with online safety and porn. And if friendships are getting more intense and complicated, well, start with peer group pressure, respect and consent. You don't need to teach everything today. You just need to teach that next thing that's relevant. Now, if this has helped to make it all feel a little bit simpler, please do make sure you subscribe. And if you want more help breaking sex ed into small, manageable conversations, have a look at the resources below.